These details that I share with you today, they aren't going to be in any particular order. So it's not a ranking or anything like that. Just 10 details that make this room feel especially nostalgic. Hey everyone, my name is Perry, and welcome back to the Cassette Phase. So I know it's the middle of the week, but I just kind of felt like taking a little break, sitting on the couch, turning on the camera, and sharing some nostalgia with you all. And what I'd like to do today is take you all around my 80s inspired vintage home office / living room, known as the Den to most of you, and point out 10 little details that make this place feel like a time machine. And we'll take some time to work in our cassette of the day, as always, but the theme for today, as with most days here in the Den, is simply going to be nostalgia, and the things and the items that we place throughout our spaces that provide us with a sense of comfort. Sound like fun to you? Come hang out. Okay everyone, welcome back to the Ottoman, and welcome to another great day here in the Den. For today's background noise, I've just got a playlist of old Mega Man playthroughs going on the TV. I just love the music and the sound effects of all those Mega Man games. I actually have a playlist with the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo playthroughs, along with some episodes of that old cartoon mixed in. So it's just kind of a fun playlist to have on shuffle. For today's cassette of the day, I want to go back to the year 1991, almost to the day, because these shows premiered August 11th of 1991, so right there at the end of the summer, and I can remember it like it was yesterday, honestly, because Nickelodeon was venturing into the world of original animation and cartoons. Kind of their answer to the traditional Saturday morning cartoon, which was still going pretty strong, I'd say, in 1991. They debuted with 3 shows. You probably remember them as well as I do if you watch this channel. Doug was the first one. Rugrats was the second show. And then they threw in a bizarre wild card for the 3rd show, and that was Ren and Stimpy, which is still a very odd show to this day if you go back and watch any of these episodes. And I know that I've featured this tape before. I think I showed it on the channel when I first got it, and I was putting it into its rightful place over in the VHS closet. But I wanted to talk about it in a little bit more depth today because it's just so cool. I still haven't opened it, and I probably won't open it, honestly. Would I like to watch these 2 episodes? Yes, but I could find them, on DVD or elsewhere, because the packaging is just so cool. I mean, check it out. You've got a coupon here on the front for Johnson & Johnson products, and also coupons for products like Mattel. Very cool. We all love Mattel, right? And what's cool about these old Nickelodeon tapes is the actual tape itself was oftentimes orange, which I love orange. It's one of my favorite colors. As we go around the Den today and look at some of the details, you're going to see quite a bit of orange. And I don't know, maybe that comes from my love of Nickelodeon as a kid, or maybe that contributed to it. I don't know. But yeah, just a cool old show. These were before the days of SpongeBob and Beavis and Butthead and some of these others. And it took some risks with some of the gross out humor and stuff that's still honestly kind of disgusting if you go back and watch it now. But Nickelodeon at the time was all about slime and gack and you can't do that on television and all those types of things. And so Ren and Stimpy especially considering that Doug was so kind of wholesome, you know, a wholesome like coming of age cartoon about an 11-year-old kid who's figuring out how to navigate those awkward years. And then of course you had Rugrats, which was literally about babies and toddlers. And then to follow it up with something like this, I think was a bold choice, but really, really memorable. You know, think about Powdered Toast Man and Log and all those types of things. And as a kid, honestly, I was kind of like, I don't like Ren and Stimpy as much. So maybe by the time that one came on, it was time to go play outside or something, or turn on the Nintendo. But I grew to appreciate it more as I got older. And now I think it's kind of hilarious. So I figured it would be a good one to talk about for today's cassette of the day. Now, these details that I share with you today, they aren't going to be in any particular order. So it's not a ranking or anything like that. Just 10 details that make this room feel especially nostalgic. And today, we won't really be focusing on things like vintage toys or action figures, or media like VHS and DVD and cassettes, at least not for today. And probably not even like video games or electronics this time around. Today, we're going to focus mostly on household items that feel really retro. With all of that said, let's get started. So I'm thinking where I would like to start today is going to be brass lamps. You know, brass lamps I think have kind of come back and gone away and then come back again over the years. But to me, they are just so 80s. And maybe they were a holdover from the late 70s. I'm not sure. It just seems like there were always brass lamps in my houses growing up. I think maybe it continued on into the 90s a little bit before people were like, we got to get rid of brass lamps and brass fixtures. But, and this one over here's got partial brass on it. I used to have a full brass lamp here, but you know, it shorted out and I had to replace it. So I'm okay with the glass and brass combo on this one because the shade is still really retro. The shade is important if you're going to have, you know, retro feeling lamps in your space. So yeah, I just wanted to start there. I have lots of memories of a brass lamp that was in our childhood home that had a switch at the bottom, like a button that you could step on, and it would light up 3 different levels of brightness on the bulbs above. And I just had lots of memories of, like, you know, when you're a little kid, you remember things that took place at the floor level, you know, or at the carpet. And I remember playing with, you know, stompers and Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels and action figures and all kinds of things, and even reading comics and books on the carpet next to the base of a brass lamp. So when I set out to create this room, that was one thing that I knew I was going to have were some brass lamps. Let's keep going. So another detail that you will find all around the den are these grandmother style doilies. And some of you are probably like, wow, that's lame, doilies really? But you know, you'll figure out as we go through this, if you haven't already, that the grandmother house is comforting to me. I've talked about it before in the past. It's just, it brings back so many good, warm, comfortable feelings and memories, and doilies were part of that. So we'll go back over here and see another one there. You see me feature one just about every video when I do the cassette of the day. I've always got one on the Ottoman. I don't know if all of these, you know, qualify as doilies. Sometimes it's just like, I don't know, lace table runners and things that you can spread out on various surfaces. But yeah, not only do they protect your wood furniture and your glorious old console TV, but I think they look cool. You know, am I doing an ironic play on grandma decor? Maybe, as I have a Super Nintendo classic right next to the doily there. But yeah, it's just something that I enjoy having around the room, and that's why there are several. So let's move on to the next item. Now, I'm going to try my best not to wobble here as I'm standing in my office chair to get this angle. But the next household item that I want to talk about are these rugs here, these braided, oval-shaped rugs, you know, area rugs. And this big one in particular I was looking for years and years to find one that was just the right colors for what I was going for. And let me hop down for a second. Try not to drop you. Yeah, browns, tans, orange, even some green mixed in. I think it really brings this room completely together. Like honestly, without it, it's just a bunch of beige modern carpet. And who loves that? I've got a smaller one over here that I found at an estate sale a few years back that I just like as my my little doormat entrance into the VHS closet there. But yeah, this is literally the centerpiece. It reminds me of Elliot's bedroom in E.T. I've shown you the image of that before, but if I can remember, I'll put it in here again. It looks very similar. And this particular style of rug shows up more often than you'd think. You just probably aren't strange like me and notice all the time. But if you're watching, movies, sitcoms, whatever the case may be, from back in the 80s and into the 90s, you'll see a lot of these style of rug. And as this room has evolved over the years, it always kind of felt like there was something missing with the feel that I was going for. And the second I started adding plants, and most of these are faux plants, but I do have a real one over there too. I feel like it just, I don't know, it filled in the space and gave me the exact feel that I was going for. Having house plants all around, it's just something that I remember very clearly from my childhood, and I had to work it into the den here. So there's the one actual plant that I have, doing okay right there by the window. But I've got several others mixed in. I read somewhere a while back that plant life does something for us as humans, having them in our homes, and probably not the fake ones, the artificial ones, but real plant life. I think it does something for our health or our mental health. I don't know. I should look that back up, but and then specifically, not just houseplants, but I'm going to kind of combine these two items into one. The wicker basket. The little wicker basket that you would put plants in. I have a few of those. Let me go back around here without making you dizzy. There's another one there. I mean, doesn't that just feel old school to you? It does to me. So the wicker basket and artificial houseplant combo, along with like the, what are these called? Like the macrame plant hangers. Feels like a classic staple from all of our grandparents' houses. I don't know, maybe just me. But that was like one element that was missing, and something that I'll always have in here going forward is several pieces of plant life. Moving right along here, we've got, and I don't know the exact terminology for all of this stuff, so bear with me, but like cross-stitch type art, wall decor. And I don't think it's all cross-stitch. Some of it may just be, I don't know, it's like textile-based wall decor. Stuff with some texture to it. And I've got several examples around the room here. Probably a holdover from 60s and 70s home decor. Always makes me think a little bit of the Brady Bunch house, which is another big inspiration for this room, as you guys know. I got a couple more over here. But I don't know what it is, if it's the texture, the fabric art with the string and the yarn and the thread. I don't know, but something about it just feels really, really wholesome and nostalgic. So I had to put several examples here in the den. And for anyone keeping count, we're halfway through the list now. I think we've done 5. So talking about, on the last item, something wholesome feeling, and moving on to something that's not as wholesome feeling, one of the details I love having around this room are ashtrays. And there we've got an Arkansas Razorbacks ashtray. I'm originally from Arkansas, for anyone that's new to the channel. Only lived there for a few years as a very young child, but I had family there pretty much my whole life after that, and visited countless times. So really like that ashtray. I only have one other one right now, and it's this one here from a furniture store in McKinney, Texas. But I love the color of that one. It's like that amber glass color. And you know, it harkens back to a time where there were ashtrays on every surface at, you know, the relative's house that you visited, or even the restaurant that you went and ate at with your family. There were always ashtrays around, which is obviously not a great thing for our health, and I'm glad we've kind of moved past that. But these little relics right here, I like having them here in the room. All right, so for this next one, you get my point of view perspective for most of my workday sitting right here. And I wanted to show some vintage office supplies, which I consider those to be small little details that just, you know, do wonders for the feel of the room here. So we've got a little vintage duck, like a metal duck. I think it's meant to hold like a pen for like a stationery set. I always just use it to kind of sort my cords and things when I need to grab them quickly. We've got a stapler here that is, here. Of course, wood grain, and I should have dusted. Sorry about that. You guys know me, I like anything wood grain. As you'll see in the next example here, we've got a wooden tape dispenser. Yeah, we've really hit the big time now, guys. We're sitting in our corner of YouTube talking about a tape dispenser. I don't know how we got here, but here we are. And then I guess we could also include this vintage banker's lamp. Get that to focus a little bit. There we go. These banker lights is another thing that I think shows up in a lot of TV shows and movies from that period of time. So I like having it right here on the desk. It's perfect. Just the right amount of light. Since I've got this big window right here, I don't need much. And then we'll mix in, you know, this isn't vintage, but a cool little retro Pac-Man coffee mug that I just use to hold my pens. So yeah, if you're gonna have to have office supplies around, they might as well be fun, vintage, and retro. Now, we could probably do a whole separate video, and maybe we will one day, similar type thing, but talking just about furniture, you know, furniture from the 80s home. But I want to talk for just a minute about this Ottoman here. You know, this is the famous Ottoman that we use for so many things here on this channel. You know, this is where we do our cassettes of the day. Anytime I've got viewer mail or pickups or anything that I want to show you guys, I'm usually sitting right here at this Ottoman, maybe from the other angle, but it's perfect for putting my feet up. You know, if I'm watching TV across the room, it's great for holding, you know, food and drinks, and it's a perfect catch-all. And as I mentioned when I first got it, if it's not the exact same Ottoman that my grandfather had in front of his leather chair for as long as I could remember, it's very, very close. It definitely has the exact same vibe with like the corduroy feel to it, and just the shape and the size. You know, I used to stand in his leather chair and jump onto this thing when I was a real little kid and see if I could get it to slide across the room. But like I said, now it serves this purpose for me. Sometimes I'll actually have newspaper sitting here. You know, I will once in a while grab a newspaper and sit here and read it with my coffee in the morning. But most of the time I've just got my crossword puzzles. I've got like a stack of vintage crossword puzzles or word finds, I guess, that I will get out if I'm having a stressful day at work, and I'll, you know, take a 5 to 10 minute break and I'll do some of these. And then on a similar note, I'm a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes. And I really don't feel like my day starts off well if I don't read at least one comic of Calvin and Hobbes. Love it so much. You know, it kind of gives you a good perspective. It gives you some good nostalgic vibes to start your day. A lot of them are hilarious. A lot of them are deep. And that's why I always have a collection of Calvin and Hobbes sitting out here on this Ottoman. So we're almost done, guys. We've got 2 items left. And this number 9, I guess, it's going to be several. And I guess I'm just going to categorize this as grandma-style knickknacks. You know, little shelf decor items that, you know, you just put around the room, mix in with your with your vintage toys, your action figures, your VHS tapes or whatever, that just kind of ground it a little bit, at least for me. And so I'm not gonna blabber over the top of this one. I'm gonna let some music play, and I'm just gonna take you through some of these from around the room. And as we wrap up for the day, one last item to show you. Is this considered electronics or appliances? I'm not really even sure, but it's this amazing Galaxy fan that we've got here. We had one very similar to this growing up. Now ours was blue. You know, it had like a dark blue and a light blue button on it. And these are brown and tan, which is still cool. Fits in perfectly with the room. Found this at an estate sale years ago. It still works. And it actually comes in handy during the Texas summers. Just having a little airflow in the room. I don't use it as often as I do my other one. You know, I've got like a more modern fan over there under the desk. But I will turn this one on from time to time. I don't want to burn the motor out because it is such a cool vintage item. But what household in the 80s did not have one of these things lying around? Am I right? Did anyone else? Did you have a Galaxy fan at your place? And if so, what color was it? Let me know. And there we are. So I hope that you all enjoyed this close-up look at some of the details here in the den. And I also hope that you're finding this to be a fun place to hang out. And if you are, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to like the video. And you know what I'm gonna say next? Only if you actually liked this video. But for now, and as always, relax. Enjoy life and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.